Hello, welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot for September 10th. So, a couple of things. First of all, I want to really express my gratitude and my appreciation for all of my subscribers and all of my viewers. You know, we really are sort of a bit of a grassroots channel. I don't do sort of a lot or any promotion of this channel. I like to think that the people who are most going to resonate with my message are the ones that are going to be attracted to my channel. So I thank each and every one of you who have either subscribed or view on a regular basis, or maybe this is your first time, and if so, welcome to the Soulprint family. The subscribes and the thumbs up and the comments are all helpful. They're amazing. I love to get them. The comments sometimes are incredibly witty, sometimes very brilliant, almost always informative. So I thank you for all of that. You know, it is your energy that goes into responding to this channel and what I do that makes it what it is. And for that, I really do thank you. Okay. There is a subscriber of this channel who actually has a channel of her own. Her name is Kay Koppit. I think I'm saying that right. It's K-O-P-I-T, and K, like the name, K-A-Y, and then K-O-P-I-T. She has a really interesting channel. She doesn't put out a lot of videos, but she recently put out one. And if you would like, I would really like you to just scoot over there and check it out. I watched the video before I went to Toronto, so I'm not real crystal clear in my head, but I think it says thank you in the title. And it's a really lovely project or idea that she has come up with that I think some of you may really like to get involved with. So maybe I encourage you to check that out and see what she has to offer. All right. So as I said in my last video, this week's videos are kind of going to be a bunch of mini reads because I want to just kind of catch up on what's going on a little bit here. Two things. One, I had mentioned in my last video that there was a doctor who, a judge who sort of had mandated that medical professionals need to start using the veterinarian horse drug on patients. Apparently, his brain cells rearranged themselves into something that would be considered cohesive, and he has withdrawn that. So that's good. Also, there was a comment from somebody who said that, I should do more research because there's two different kinds of the drug, one for humans and one for animals. Well, that's incorrect. Okay. So there's one drug by that name, and in very altered dosages, in very, very minimal cases, is it sometimes used. Now, unless I remember correctly, it's used for things like malaria. Okay, so I don't know if in their southern states, you guys have a lot of cases of malaria, but I'm thinking not. It's dangerous, and it's, it's frustrating, but more than that, it's really scary that there are these sort of misconceptions out there because they're dangerous and they're killing people. So today I want to look at sort of a couple of things. So we're going to start with the Canadian election. Okay, so you're seeing this video on September 10th, and early voting has started today. So 10, 11, 12, 13 here in Canada is early voting for the federal election. There is mail-in voting offered, and then of course there is in-person voting on the 20th, I believe. So fundamentally, the race really does boil down to, really is a race right now between the Liberals and the Conservatives. So Justin Trudeau on one side, and I think his name's Peter O'Toole for the Conservatives. So this is kind of a thing. You've got him and Kenny and Ford, and they're all trying to emulate the bad fit of Trump's suits. Okay, I don't know what's in their heads, but that just seems to be the way they're leaning. So in some ways, this really is an election about whose idea wins, right? Are we inclusive? Are we supportive? Are we giving? Are we nurturing? Or are we more, exclusive? Are we more, well, we're not going to do this because it'll cost too much. And, oh, well, geez, that's too bad if a bunch of, lives are put in danger. I'll give you just a quick example. Here in Alberta, Kenny, who I swear to you, his days are numbered. He is going to be a one-term premier. I saw an announcement the other day that said, well, the Alberta government has sort of backed down on their proposal to cut nurses' salaries by 3%. What? You are in, I don't know what, month 20 of a pandemic. You are in the fourth wave. You should be raising their salaries, not even sniffing around the idea of lowering them. But that's the kind of idiocy that you sometimes will get from conservative governments, in my humble opinion. So let's take a look. I have my pendulum here, and I'm going to ask it, and we're also going to take a quick look at the cards. So I've rambled quite long enough. Come on down. Nope, put on. Don't come down yet, because I'm going to do the pendulum first. So this is just a couple of really quick questions pertaining to the Canada election. Is Trudeau going to win this federal election this September? Is he going to remain Prime Minister of Canada? Okay, so that's like a really, really strong yes. Now, the big question is, so this is the thing, the reason he called the election 2 years early or whatever it is because he has a minority government, which means he always has to side up with another party. Invariably, it's the NDP, the New Democratic Party, because the Conservatives, their whole deal is to oppose him, right? But what he's trying to do with this election is gain a majority, because he is saying that he needs a clear mandate from Canadians as to the direction they want this country to go in. So now I have read on this before, and I'm going to be curious to see if the cards tell me the same thing. Is Trudeau going to get his majority government? Okay, so you can see this is a yes, but it is a far more kind of conservative yes. Okay, so now you can come on down and let's take a look and see what the cards have to say about this. So, earlier this week, Trudeau was on the campaign trail, and as he was leaving an event, in fact, as he was leaving an event, he had gravel thrown at him, like little rocks. And I believe it was that same day they had to actually cancel another event due to security concerns. So you can sort of see where there's a little bit of that same, if you're not with me, you're the enemy. If you don't believe what I believe, that sort of real right-wing attitude coming out. Well, if I don't like you and I'm angry, it doesn't matter what I do. I can just do it because I want you to know that I'm really angry with you or I don't agree with you. And, the bottom line is that's not how we behave in Canada. In fact, I don't think that by and large that's how anybody behaves in any country. The problem in the States, of course, is just there's so darn many of you that even if it's a small number, it's huge, or a small percentage, it's huge. So here we go. Let's take a look at the federal election here in Canada this September. Results, Canadian election, results, Canadian election, results, Canadian election. Okay, let's see what stayed on the ground here. Okay. All right. Well, if you're going to have two cards that stay on the ground, these are kind of are good ones, right? So you have the 10 of Cups for you know, celebration, good feelings, strong emotions, feeling like you've accomplished something, you've arrived, you're at a place of contentment and success, and the victory card. All right, so let's see what these, oh, look, and death is on the bottom, so that's going to be interesting to see how that rolls out. Maybe that O'Toole guy will be booted off as leader of the Conservatives. Just so sorry, did I say that out loud? I certainly didn't mean to. So this has been a hard election. It was a snap election. It was called very, very quickly. But basically what's going on is the Canadian government, as it stands now, is wanting to literally change its fortunes. They want to put themselves in a much, much stronger position. And it's going to be a battle, no matter how enthusiastic that yes was. It really is going to be a battle. And, you know, part of the reason that there's sort of so much pushback, if you will, is because, excuse me, we're in the middle of a fourth wave, and you've now called an election. And despite the fact that there are all these options, you know, you've still called an election in the middle of a fourth wave of an ongoing pandemic. So Trudeau is getting some pushback from that. But frankly, given the amount of money and the amount of resources that have been spent propping up this country, keeping the citizens of it, you know, as safe as they can, giving them the resources they need to be able to carry on with their lives as best they can given the circumstances, it kind of makes sense to me that, you know, this election, if nothing else, creates a bit of a check-in, right? Are we going in the right direction or are we not? The problem, of course, with the Conservative government getting in is if they get in, they're going to start cutting things left, right, and center. And not only are they going to cut the things that are out there right now, keeping people afloat, but they're going to cut other stuff under the guise of having to pay for it. All right, so you know, I think that in some ways, the last couple of years has created a situation where Canadians are doing a little bit of soul searching about what we want from our government. And it's also given people across the country a good look at their governments, certainly provincially, and how they function and how they operate and how responsive they are to the needs of the people of their province and by extension the country. And some messaging has been very good, and some of it has been really, really unfortunate. And there are going to be politicians that ultimately end up paying that price because the messaging came across as cruel or harsh or insulting. And then, you know, so that soul searching is leading us to a place where it is time for an evaluation. Yeah, there's a lot of worry. There's a lot of concern. This is by no means at all a cakewalk. There is a lot that's going into this. There's a lot of, defensive posturing. There's a lot of, really hoping that the message is getting through and the right choices are being made. But you've got, good news coming. There's movement towards a better situation. Now, I've said this before, and it's sort of being confirmed here, that while Trudeau is going to get, I believe, based on these cards, a majority government, it is going to be a very tiny majority. Now, is that enough to successfully run the country? Yeah. Right? But I don't think he's going to walk away with quite the big win he had hoped to. But I also don't think that this is going to, backfire and blow up in his face. Ultimately, the country is going to end up in a position where they are going to be able to move forward in a way where the safety and the security, the happiness and contentment, the health of the country is able to move forward in a way that allows its citizens to continue to grow and prosper, and most of all at this point in time, be safe. So there's that. All right. I want to take a look at the filibuster and sort of Manchin. That's really who I want to take a look at and see what his game is. Because, he did this whole thing with the infrastructure bill, and then eventually they actually did come out with a bipartisan infrastructure bill. The problem is, and good on him, honestly, good for him. Because he scores a valid point about, if you get rid of the filibuster, that then sets up the whole situation for continuing governments. And for reasons that nobody outside of the United States understands, and I suspect a good number of you don't either, nobody quite understands how come in your country 63% or whatever it is a majority as opposed to 50+1, which is what it is in other countries. So, what it does is it sets up a situation where you can have a party that is sort of all on board, and yet they can't get anything done. And, let's face it, that rule has been around for a long time, as I understand it. But certainly Mitch McConnell took it to a whole new, decisive, and corrupt level. Okay? So let's take a look at Manchin and, by extension, the filibuster. Let's see what's going on there. So right now, what is he blocking? Right now, he's blocking, I don't know, the voting rights thing. I'm not sure what the infrastructure. I've sort of lost track, but let's just take a look at what's going on with him and what his motivation is. All right? Tell me about Joe. Tell me about Joe. Tell me about Joe. Now, I know that he is a Democrat in a red state, in a red area. And it's pretty impressive that he has managed to hang on to that. But this is the thing. Listen, he's a politician first and foremost. Bottom line. He is always going to be about what positions him best politically. What is going to score him the points he needs. Now, somewhere in his head, he actually believes that he can do and accomplish a lot without sort of some of the excessiveness, maybe, of, the Republican Party. And I guess maybe to some degree he's correct, but at the bottom of it, it's really about his growth. It's really about what he needs and wants to accomplish for himself politically, and of course, by extension, for his state. But it's a secondary focus. It really, really is. And so when he puts up these like roadblocks of I will do this or I will not do that, or he sends out messages, it really is about positioning himself. It really is about keeping his name front and center in the news. He really likes the idea that he's a power broker, that he has the power to literally make or break. Okay, and I'm ignoring that cinema person because she is a little puppet and she will follow. Okay, so in some ways she's almost irrelevant to the situation. As long as Manchin's given her cover, she's going to follow along behind him like a little puppy dog. If he changes his vote, she's going to figure out a way to, shift her stance on something. But he really likes, kind of being that person who literally can hold everything up. Now, it feels like some of the very things that he is blocking right now, ultimately you're going to get through. And so, is it possible that by doing what he does, things get tweaked, maybe they get stronger, maybe they get a little bit weaker, but it keeps everybody happy? I mean, you have an infrastructure infrastructure bill out there that I understand most Americans are super supportive of, despite the whatever it is, 3.7 or whatever trillion dollar price tag. Okay. So in some ways, there is some good that comes from it. But in some ways, it really does create a lot more dissension and a lot more your side, my side, my way or no way kind of attitude, which I got to say, honestly, is about the last thing the country needs right now. But overall, overall, he can facilitate change, but this death card is making me wonder if at some point he's not going to push kind of too far in the wrong direction. And I have to tell you, I'm getting sort of flashes or pictures in my head where there are conversations going on, and I don't know. I mean, I think there's been one or two or whatever between him and Biden, but there's also been conversations going on with other, cohorts of his, right? His peers. And he is under a great deal of pressure. And, on the one hand, it's sort of like, listen, you can stand up for your principles all you want, but if you cost us the 2022 midterms, if you cost us the 2024 election, you're like dead. Okay. Like you have lost your value to us. And frankly, there are some red states that are going to flip blue. And so maybe we just don't quite need you and your shenanigans quite as much as you think we do right now. So there's kind of that energy going on around him. He's under a lot of pressure. The poor guy, he just wants things to go back the way they were. Well, the way they were was that they were incredibly corrupt. And the way they were was that long ago, there was the loss of two sides coming together and meeting in the middle. That hasn't happened for a while. And so in some ways, he's holding on to a yesterday that at this point cannot be the today or the tomorrow. And, that's a little bit, I think, where he's getting himself strung up. And frankly, and I love Biden. You guys know I called Biden and Harris as president and vice president a long, long time before either one of them announced they were running. But in some ways, Joe suffers from that same sort of thing where he's really stunned that things are, that they changed so much in the 4 years that the orange one was in power, that it sort of startled him how incredibly partisan things have gotten. And so there needs to be a realization that, you know what, you need to move forward and you need to address things for now and how it is right now. But, there's going to be this continued attempt to sort of get a balance, get agreement, and it might work and it might not. But honestly, I have to tell you at this point, it feels like Joe was walking on, I want to say, a little bit thinner ice than we realize, and perhaps even that he realizes. So let's just ask a couple, really a couple questions. In order to get the bills passed that need to get passed, and I believe it's infrastructure. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble with that word today. Infrastructure and the voting rights. And of course, they become more and more and more important when you see the kind of nonsense and shenanigans that are going on in some of these red states with some of these governors. So the question is there going to be a cutout of the filibuster section that will allow these bills to move forward? So that's a yes. And I have to tell you, I don't exactly know what that entails or how that comes about. But so are the bills going to be able to move forward in a way that, is successful? Okay, so we're getting a yes on that. Ultimately, and I don't mean next month, and I don't even mean, in 4 or 5 or 6 months, but somewhere down the road, is the filibuster going to be removed? Is it going to be eliminated? Is it going to be gone? Because it really creates a very, very unfavorable playing field. So yes, at some point down the road, it looks like the filibuster is going to go on its way. Now, I want to take a look at, so you've got at Abbott, God bless his stupid soul, who, has decided that the way to handle not making abortions available for for women, and I guess, for women who want control over their own health care, over their own body. And for a lot of these women, they're not standing there on their own. There are partners, there are, spouses that are, equally going through some really tough decisions pertaining to those kinds of healthcare choices. But he's done that, and his solution to rape or to the abortion thing is he's just going to eliminate rape, because then that way there won't be any need for rape victims to get an abortion. And by the way, they've got 6 weeks. So for a lot of women, they don't even know they're pregnant at the 6-week mark. All right. So there you have that. Now, I have to say, and again, this is just my opinion based on, what I'm familiar with. It seems to me that there really should be somewhere where, there's this sort of meet in the middle idea about, I know here in Canada, you can access an abortion basically for any reason you want or no reason at all, up to, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, if there's anybody out there who actually knows, I think it is 12 weeks. Because by that time, you can get the amniocentesis done. So if you are, looking to abort because there is a deformity or a birth defect or something like that, you will have that information. But so it feels to me like the only way the United States is ever going to sort of get some sort of resolution is to sort of meet in the middle a little bit. But more importantly, it's really important that because the country is supposed to be a separation of church and state, it's really, really important that religious factors from any side are removed from the equation. And of course, that is exactly the opposite of what Abbott did. So there's that. Let's take a look at I think I'm just going to do a broad sort of abortion rights, like what's going on there. And, I know that there was an announcement, I believe it was like this morning, saying that, the Department of Justice is going full on throttle to, deal with the situation. But, from what I understand, the states have a fair amount of autonomy when it comes to the health care they provide. So let's take a look at this, shall we? SCOTUS, Women's Health. SCOTUS, Women's Health, SCOTUS, Women's Health. And I have to say that, as Trump was putting up these staunch Republicans, you could see the writing was on the wall for a challenge. But the last decision that was made by the Supreme Court was really not a good one. What little I know about the Supreme Court is it always strikes me that they're very willing, particularly when it comes to this kind of stuff, they're very, very willing to sort of shoot it back to the government. And their reply is, listen, if you don't like it, make a new law. Make something that you do like. The problem is I don't know. Was there not a law already? And was that not overturned? So you know what I'm saying? Like they sort of bounce things away from the bench that they don't really want to take a good look at, or they render their decisions and they narrow it down. And instead of looking at sort of a pie as a whole, they look at a sliver out of it, and they say, well, in this instance, for this sliver, this is what we're ruling. And so what you get with that is often people who are kind of, genuinely disappointed with the rulings coming out of the United States Supreme Court, because in some ways it feels like they're sort of shirking their responsibility. Again, based on the energy I'm reading and my own humble opinion. So what's happening now is you're going to see more and more states literally trying to steal away women's rights when it comes to birth control. And this is the thing. It's not only about abortion. It's going to be about availability of birth control. It's going to be about who can have it and who cannot have it. So it's going to, the people who now view that what has happened is a great big win for them, and God knows they've been trying to get this win for a really, really, really long time. They sort of feel like they have the momentum, and they're going to push for every single thing that they can push for, that they can think about pushing for, that they ever fantasized about pushing for. And the problem is you have a very tight partnership or connection between these red state politicians and religious fractions, religious groups. And it's an interesting thing, because it really is, the way I understand it anyways, it really is the white evangelicals who are all about this. Not all evangelicals, just the white ones. And I would be curious to know, okay, this is snipey and maybe I'm just a little petty, but I would be really curious to know how many of those white evangelicals have really big families because they weren't practicing any birth control because that's not what they agree. Or if indeed you have a lot of white evangelicals who have 2 or 3 kids. So I don't know, did they stop having sex in their 20s and 30s? That could explain a lot if you actually think about that. Or were one way or the other, they practicing some form of birth control, but singing a different tune in public. So you've got that going on. The moves that what is going on now really is backwards. Okay, it is taking your country back in time instead of moving forward, particularly given that I think it was the same day that Abbott signed that nonsense into law. Mexico said you can't deny women the right to control their bodies because it's unconstitutional. And then there's Texas like jumping right back into, I don't know, the 1800s or something. So it's backwards. But ultimately, even though it's going to be a bit of an uphill battle, even though there's some difficult times ahead, the reality is that the momentum against these kinds of restrictive laws is really going to continue to build. And ultimately, these people who are trying to steal the rights, who are trying to take the country back, a century or two, ultimately they are going to lose, and they're going to lose in such a way that it feels as if they're almost not going to have a whole lot of recourse or a lot of wiggle room. So whether that is something that the federal government steps in, and again, you know what? These are the things that happen when you have people making decisions based on their own moral code and their own religious beliefs. And they're not following the Constitution that, you guys are supposed to be all adhering to, because that's what the vows that you take are about. So definitely looks like there's going to be a battle here. It's not going to be easy, but what you're going to see is you're going to see companies who are going to start punishing, if you will, or pulling back again the donations and support, and some flat out coming out and saying, we not only don't support this, but we're going to help kind of the underdog now and do whatever we can. So, and listen, I know that, they yelled and screamed a little while ago when this first thing started in Texas, and all these big companies said, how dare you, do this or that to your voters, and we're not going to, and then very quietly, some of them crept back and started with the donations again. Because let's face it, the Republican Party is typically very good to big business, to corporations. And so simply from a business perspective, supporting the Republican ideas is going to be beneficial for the average business. So you can see where they creep back, but ultimately, and this is a shift that is going on that is bigger and broader than any of us know and can see right now, is ultimately you're going to have more and more people getting to a place where it is like, what you're doing isn't right. I don't agree with it. And either I can't work for you, or either we're going to protest against what you're doing as a company, as a government, as anything. So what you're getting is, this is the thing. It's like some of this stuff people got really, really complacent with, right? I mean, everybody sat back for decades saying, listen, Roe versus Wade is established law. Nothing's going to happen to it. Well, meanwhile, the evangelicals and the family. By the way, if you guys haven't seen that little mini series about the family on Netflix, really, really well worth watching. They were plodding along behind the scenes, and they were doing what needed to be done until finally they got to a place where they had a Republican president and they could slam the courts full of Republican, really, really right to the right judges. There's nothing moderate about who those, the people that were put in, the judgeships. I don't think that's the word, but you know what I mean, under Trump. And so, what's going to happen now is people are going to sort of, it's interesting because I think in my last video at the end of it, I was sort of giving y'all kind of a comment about how you can't get complacent. You need to get up and you need to fight this, and you need to, prepare yourself for this midterm election exactly the way you did for the last midterm election. You need to push. You can't surrender. You can't get complacent. And honestly, it feels like it's not just you, it's global. But it is the energy that seems to be coming into the forefront, which is you get in life what you focus your attention on. I mean, manifestation 101, right? Be the change you want to make. You can't sit at the sidelines and expect good things to roll your way, or the things you want to roll your way, if you're not putting any energy into helping create the right environment. So that seems to be the energy. So, what do I think? I think that this is going to be overturned eventually. I think the federal government is going to step in and say, this is what you cannot do. Okay, you cannot do this in your states. But I don't think that it's going to be a finger snap. Okay, I don't. I think you're looking at some time down the road. And, the thing is if the Republicans are able to sort of drag this out and it becomes a hot topic issue for the 2024 elections, things could get very, very snarly. Because this is being created by people who truly do believe that they are the moral compass and the moral adjudicators of your country. Alrighty, so thank you so very much for being here. I hope you've enjoyed this video. your support, amazing. And so I thank you very much for that. It is the weekend. So have a good one. Take some time out, decompress, relax. If you're having lovely weather where you are, enjoy it. And, until next time, take care. Be well. And we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.